Let your actions, your integrity, and your consistency speak for you. That's where we're starting today because too many of us are exhausted, not from failure, but from being misunderstood. We've spent energy trying to clarify, correct, and explain ourselves to people who already made up their minds about who we are. But your purpose was never meant to be filtered through someone else's comfort. Hey, wonderfuls, welcome back to Helpers High by me, Tiffani. Episode 12, Perception versus Purpose. Today, we're talking about what it means to be judged by perception, especially when our confidence is seen as a threat, our feedback or our opinions are labeled as negative, and our growth starts to make people squirm. We care, we speak up, we ask for clarity, and all of a sudden, we're the problem. I like to refer to it as the conversation behind the conversation. I'm naming something that so many people, especially women, especially high energy, emotionally intelligent, heart forward people face, and we rarely say it out loud. And yes, I said especially women because oftentimes men are seen as assertive or bold, decisive. And in that same or similar situation, if a woman handled it the same way, they would be labeled as abrasive, aggressive, or even emotional. But make no mistakes, being misunderstood, judged by our presence, or quietly surviving betrayal in the very spaces that we help to build can be anyone's experience. Being safe is not the same as being respected. And being praised in private is not the same as being supported in public. Of course, we should always speak with kindness, but let's be clear. Kindness is not code for play it small or shrink, as they like to say these days. We do not need to dilute our truth just to make someone else feel comfortable in their misunderstanding. That's not humility, that's people pleasing in disguise. And there is a difference between disagreement and disrespect. I said I didn't agree with you. I didn't say you weren't worthy. Let's not confuse the two. There will be times where other people's perception of us start doing its own thing. So, an example at work, you're doing great work, your results speak for themselves, and then boom, you get feedback that's more personal. You're told, can you tone it down in meetings? Or can you join but observe only? People around are starting to feel like you're taking up too much space. Suddenly you realize it's not about your performance, it's about their perception, about your energy, your confidence. And yes, it's confusing because how did you go from you're killing it being the feedback to you're a little too much? Let me be one of the first people to remind you your presence is not a problem. Your growth isn't aggressive, and your confidence is not disrespectful. I'm talking to anyone who ever walked away from a conversation thinking, wait a minute, that feedback wasn't about my efforts, my consistent results, how I show up every day for you. It was about your comfort. Okay, so imagine getting this feedback. You have a lot of influence. People look up to you. You should be more careful when you disagree. Excuse me? Did you just say you know that my voice matters? That my influence is impactful? But you're not comfortable with how I'm using it? Because what I hear is my voice carries weight. And that's exactly why I can't be silent when something doesn't sit right. I have to speak up. because people are depending on me. Now, I'm not disagreeing to divide, I'm disagreeing to grow so that we can continue to be the people that we said we were, right? That's what you want for all of your relationships. Influence should invite dialogue, not demand our silence. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. Some people actually get promoted for this. Or, if nothing less, a seat at the table. Because others see the influence that they have, they want them to be present because it helps to pull folks along in what the need is for us to all be successful. Correct? At home, when my husband wants my kids to do something, he may include me in the conversation differently because I can convince them to do something that maybe he can't. For example, right? So, speaking up or leading with clarity for changing the norm, for bringing others along, why is it that it works for some people, but others have to defend it? Why is it considered bold leadership for some, but a tone check for others? What determines this? Because to some, they're not just giving advice, they're actually expressing discomfort with your impact. They're saying, because your opinion holds weight, it challenges me. People listen to you. So when you speak up or disagree, it makes others feel exposed, defensive, or threatened. We would prefer you to soften your stance so it doesn't create tension or make waves. Nobody wants you to rock the boat. Sure, I wish everyone knew that there's a difference between being passionate and being problematic, but the truth is they don't. Sometimes they're seen as one and the same. When feedback is vague, emotional, or personal, it's going to be hard to grow from it because we're not even sure what we're fixing. We haven't been given direct feedback to something that we have control to fix. Feedback is always a gift when it's presented with the intent to strengthen relationships. But the truth is, not all feedback is created equal. Sometimes feedback is just a projection. It could be fair, and some of it is actually about them and not about you. Sometimes they're just more concerned with the optics than the truth, meaning they ignore or minimize real issues because addressing them would look bad. Nobody wants to look bad. They want to keep the peace instead of tell the truth. That's another reason. And they prefer clean image over clean conscience. I always say, I have to go to bed at night and I want to sleep well. And I do. And this is the one that gets me. And hopefully it gets you. Believe it or not, some people don't want honesty. They want harmony, even if that harmony is fake. And no amount of being liked is worth being out of alignment with your purpose. So, what does weaponized feedback look like in practice? Here's what no one says, but we all know. People can like you publicly, but participate in decision making that does not align with that support. The smile and say nothing culture is real. But hear me out. I'm not mad that we're not all besties. I'm sad that you say you love transparency until someone's brave enough to be transparent. So, those pain points, what do they actually look like? Being told that your energy is intimidating, feeling blindsided by gossip, perception that gets louder than reality exists, and the grief. And yes, I say grief because it's the grief of realizing that you can't trust everyone who smiles at you. So even when you think some mean well, there's still many disciples of Judas. They confuse conflict with disrespect. They confuse asking for clarity with being combative. And no, asking for clarity is not confrontational. It should be the expectation if you want me to do something, to have a relationship with you. I should understand where my positioning lays, correct? Okay. Hoping you agree with this. And disagreeing, even though I just said I hope you agree, and disagreeing isn't supposed to be dangerous. But some people, instead of saying, wow, good catch, will call us the problem for actually pointing it out. These are not our issues. This is a culture issue. Some people confuse accountability with attack, and it's their discomfort, not our delivery. So they're not reacting to our tone, they're reacting to their own insecurity. If we suggest something could be more inclusive, more fair, or more thoughtful, for example, suddenly we're stirring the pot. Or we're seen as disruptive when really we're just expressing that things can be better if we made a few considerations to this plan. I remember being in a meeting where we were finalizing a policy change and everything looked good on paper, right? But my gut said that something just wasn't right, that what we had planned for wasn't going to hit the way we thought it would. We would need true buy in. So I spoke up and I said, hey, can we pause for a second just to consider how the message is going to be received by the people outside of this room? It doesn't quite reflect the community that we're about to deliver it to. And I can tell you instantly, the energy in that room shifted. The room got so quiet, and a few folks gave that noted nod. Mm. And one person who was clearly irritated said, we've already put so much work into this. I don't think now is the time to nitpick. And I sat there thinking, wait, this isn't nitpicking, this is care. I brought up something that was a blind spot in this project because I asked for more inclusivity, more thoughtfulness. Suddenly, I was a disruptor. I wasn't attacking anyone. I wasn't raising my voice. I was just holding us to the standard that I know that we're capable of delivering. And that's when I realized, or should I say, that's when I was reminded that some people don't want collaboration. They want compliance. And anything that sounds like accountability is heard or received as an attack. Okay, Helpers High family, it's time for our pulse check. Some yes or no questions. Let's reflect on what perception may have done so far in our lives. Have you ever shrunk yourself to make other people feel more comfortable? Have you been punished for saying what others were thinking? Have you put trust in someone before they actually earned it? Have you expected more from someone who never really showed you safety? Okay, more yeses than nos. It's time to self reflect on what we're actually accepting. When we tell the truth with love and thoughtfulness and it still gets received as an insult, that's when we have to realize that some people aren't listening to understand us. They're listening to defend. People say they value honesty until the honesty is about them. That's just how it works. And let me be clear, this happens in all types of relationships: work, friend groups, families, church, school boards, PTA groups, everywhere. We say something bothered us, and suddenly we're doing too much. We say we don't agree, and now we're difficult. We bring up something that hurt us, and they say, can't you just let that go? Stop being so sensitive. And suddenly we begin to question ourselves, not because we did anything wrong, but because someone else can't take our honesty. And worse, if we find out after the fact that people had conversations about us, but we weren't present for them behind our back, it's betrayal. It feels like there's a fake friendship, a fake relationship going on. So You're probably wondering, what do we do? Because at the end of the day, we have to go back into the room, into these same spaces that we're talking about. This type of underlying tone exists, right? And we know that once we know more, the energy automatically has shifted, right? The relationships are never going to be the same because there's distrust amongst the group, amongst the one on one relationship, amongst you and someone else. The first thing that I say to this is we have to stay true to who we are, period. If you don't like who you are, that's your problem. But if you truly love who you are, then no one should make you change who you are to the core. There are things that we can do differently, inclusive activities to make sure that everyone feels appreciated. That's different than staying true to yourself, to your beliefs, to your practices, to showing up every day 100% engaged in what the narrative is going to be, to what the outcome is going to look like. You want to be a part of it, so you stay committed to that course. Now, you continue to walk with your head held high. No one should make you bend your neck, look down on the floor, and continue walking in spaces feeling like you don't belong. We don't owe anyone a watered down version of ourselves just because they're not ready for the truth. And guess what, Helpers High family? We also cannot stay bitter. We have to learn how to navigate through it without losing ourselves. We have to stay on purpose. And you know what we don't do here on Helpers High podcast, right? We do not give victim energy. We don't. We don't play the blame game, and we are here to grow. So we have to be willing to accept the things that we are capable of changing and start making those efforts before we can have other people correct theirs, right? Let's talk about our usual ownership. What can we do differently now that we know differently? Because just like their perception isn't always fair, our delivery can actually have an impact. So we have to check ourselves because it's in our control to check ourselves. So we start asking ourselves questions like, did I say it with love? Was I clear? Was I kind? Was I thoughtful enough? So when we talk about the Ben Duffy, it's time to put ourselves in other people's shoes, right? We should always do this. This is a common practice for us to engage with other people in our lives. And am I mad about what they said? This is a great question for us because I think a lot of the times we understand and sometimes we get comfortable. We let down our guard and we assume that people understand our heart, our care, our compassion. We thought they knew us. And then somehow in these conversations, we realized there's a disconnect. You could actually think that I would do that to you. You don't know me at all. So, in keeping it real, part of the hurt comes from that misplaced trust. We thought we were on the same team. It turns out that some of us wear the jersey, but we play for the other league behind closed doors. Let me give you a few steps that we have to take, something that we can do often and we should do when we find ourselves in these positions. First, breathe from the belly. Don't react in the moment. And I know it's difficult, especially when our character is on the line. We want to react because it feels like an attack. So therefore, we attack. Everybody settle down. We have to process first. It does require us to really be mindful of where the feedback, the notion, the perception came from. And stop obsessing on how other people see you. Again, remember what I said? What they say behind our backs is none of our business. What they say to our face now requires us to deep breathe and process. Okay. And most importantly, Remember who you are. Remember your purpose, why you're here, why you continue to show up every day for people who may or may not appreciate you. For us to be successful in that, we have to continue to create boundaries. Boundaries is going to be a requirement. That is the clarity that we're asking for. We need to know what the boundaries look like. And boundaries are not bitterness. I'm not talking to you anymore. This is not high school. This is not elementary school. This is how we move in our adult day-to-day life. Clear and concise. So, yes, we can be kind and still be finished with you, but still be professional enough that we get our work done, we have our relationship, and we have boundaries that say where we are in each other's lives. Depending on the relationship, of course, you may want to consider trying to clarify their perception. Clarifying is not confrontation. I heard something, got misunderstood. Can I offer context? Very different than confrontation. So, in our responsibilities, don't let gossip make us shrink. Don't let perception make us question our truth. And don't let discomfort keep us silent. Don't waste energy trying to control people's opinions of us. And keep showing up as the real you. The rest will take care of itself. I told you, eventually your people will find you. You got to trust in that. You have to believe that. Protect your peace and your professionalism. We're going to have to accept that sometimes our presence, our confidence, our energy will shift the room, but we are still always going to walk in with our heads held high. When we walk into a room fully expressed, some people will not know what to do with that. So what do? They label it. They label it to fit their understanding. Listen, I'm not going to spin this like it doesn't hurt. It does. When we're misunderstood, not only does it hurt, but it's disappointing too, right? These are people that we thought knew us. These are people that we thought appreciated us. These are people that we thought that we could be truly honest with. And instead, somehow they've weaponized our conversations to be something very different than our expectations were going into it. And yes, it happens. So what? But it does make us question what part of our relationship was actually real. Because if that's what you're harping over, then I'm now questioning this safe space that I thought we once had. Now I feel that it's fake. And we need to make sure that even though the energy has shifted, that the room feels fake, that these people could be disciples of Judas. We have to make sure that our character stays real, that we are true to ourselves. So we have to continue to show up grounded and not guarded. We have to let our excellence do the speaking for us. And we have to walk in knowing that any room that we have chose to be in, we belong there. So yes, this is the worst part for those few people who have projected this onto you. You actually have to have more confidence than you had before. Bless their heart. Look what they've done. But we have to start somewhere. Let's normalize this starting now. Feedback is not an attack. It's not. Boundaries are not betrayal. They are requirements to ensure that all of our relationships stay safe. And silence is not the price of peace. So let me recap before I close out episode 12. People will misread us. People will talk about us. But what they can't do is unseat us in what has been built in integrity. So we continue to show up. We continue to keep learning and keep leading with our whole heart. And don't let someone else's fear of your power convince you to disconnect. See you next time on Helpers High.